You probably think gold means wealth, but in Africa it means something very different. A boy in the Congo mines gold with his bare hands. No gloves, no machines, no protection. He earns less than $2 a day. Meanwhile, that same gold is sold in Dubai for thousands. And here's how it happens and who is making the real money. Armed groups and local bosses take control of the mines. Foreign traders, some with government connections, buy it up cheap. They smuggle it out in bags or even suitcases. No tax, no paperwork, no questions. When it lands in Dubai, it's refined, polished, and made legal. Suddenly, it's luxury. But the village it came from still has no school, no clean water, no future. And the gold you see in that shop window, it was built on exploitation. The real power behind this trade, it's not the miner, it's the system. Refineries, smugglers, buyers, and silence. Gold might shine, but the truth behind it, it's darker than you think. If you don't know me, my name is Noreen, and I share stories about Africa that you're not usually told. I've also put together playlists on my page so you can find the history and the stories of different countries all in one place. If your country isn't on there yet, or there's a topic you'd love me to cover, let me know, I'll be happy to add it. This is the Africa you're not shown, but I'm here to show you.
All right, thank you. Welcome back to my YouTube commentary. I hope you are doing fine. Now, I'm doing fine too. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about something powerful, okay? Because what is happening through our generation, something is moving. Something is moving. And it is the sound of awakening, okay? Not from sleep, but awakening from the silence for centuries. Now, Africa's voice was muted beneath the noise of other empires. And today, that silence is breaking. And even the markets of the world, for example, gold, it is starting to bend. It is starting to tremble because of the awakening of Africa. Now, you will ask yourself, why is gold going down? Because I know you have come across this news that gold is shrinking. The price of gold is going down. I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you how Africa is involved in this. Okay? To understand why the world feels different today, you have to see the invisible connection between the soul beneath our feet, the minerals that fuels global industry, and the consciousness rising among our people. Because Africa Rise is not only a story of politics or GDP. It is a transformation of identity and a rediscovery of value. Let's watch this clip first and then I'll come back with more commentary.
If you still don't understand why Western authorities have tried to unalive the new leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, 18 times, let me put it to you very simply. I'll give you a business example, okay, for all of our business experts out there. Previously, Burkina Faso was being paid $1 billion a year by a foreign company for the golds that they were digging out of the ground in their own country. Seems like a lot of money, right? But the fact is, these foreign parasites were robbing Burkina Faso of their gold and other precious minerals for pennies on the dollar and selling them for exorbitant rates on international markets. Now, in just a few months since these gold mines have started to operate once more under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso, just 35 years old, guess how much money they've made in just a few months? $18 billion. They were getting absolutely robbed by the colonial interests who have completely screwed over Africa for generations. And finally, there's a leader who said, not anymore. We are going to get our fair share. That's exactly what Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are all doing. And that's why Western leaders are so scared about his exceptional leadership, because they understand that this visionary mindset will not just stay contained in Burkina Faso. In fact, if left unchecked, which God willing it will be, this sort of mindset, a pan-African vision for sovereignty in Africa, will spread throughout the whole continent.
So guys, Gold is dumping 6%, even more than 6%, and Bitcoin is pumping more than 2%. What does this mean for the market? Well, gold has been hitting all-time high after all-time high, and I think it's time for people to take profits. And that's most likely what is happening right now. So people are probably taking profits from gold and funneling those money into more risky assets like crypto, like stocks. So with that being said, I think that people are rotating their money from gold to other assets. We have CPI data coming out on Friday, and next week we have rate cuts and FOMC meeting. This means that there will be tons of money flowing into the market, and I think that we will see all-time highs very, very soon for both crypto, Bitcoin, and for stocks. So what do you think about gold?
Mali's making a bold move to control its own gold. After a bitter standoff with Canadian giant Barrick Gold, the country is now building West Africa's largest gold refinery with Russian backing. The refinery, backed by Russian state-linked Rosgeo, will process up to 200 tons of gold annually, nearly 4 times Mali's current output. The message is clear. Stop exporting raw gold to Switzerland and Dubai and keep the profits at home. This deal promises more local jobs, more value retained, and less reliance on foreign markets. But there's a catch. Russia is funding the project, providing the technology and embedding itself deeper into Mali's mining and military sectors. Critics say Mali may be swapping Canadian control for Kremlin influence. This gold revolution didn't come out of nowhere. It began when Mali accused Barrick of underreporting production and refusing to comply with new laws that would boost state ownership from 20% to 35%. Mali responded by seizing control of Loulo-Gounkoto, one of Barrick's top producing mines. Barrick denies the charges and is now locked in a legal battle with Malian courts and World Bank arbitration while the mine sits in limbo, draining cash. But this isn't just about one mine. It's about African nations pushing back against Western extractive dominance and Russia stepping in to help them do it. So is this a new gold standard or African sovereignty? Or just a shinier kind of dependency? For more stories like this, visit thevoiceofafrica.com.
Gold prices just had their biggest one-day drop in 5 years. And here's why it matters. After hitting a record high of $4,381 on Monday, gold crashed 5% overnight, sliding to around $4,115. Investors are taking profits after months of hype, fueled by rate cut expectations, central bank buying, and global uncertainty. But when volatility spiked this week, traders started cashing out fast. Even silver dropped by nearly 8%, dragging the whole metals market down. It even made my SCCO Southern Copper Corp stock drop. A stronger US dollar and better risk appetite pushed investors towards stocks and away from safe havens like gold. Are you guys taking money out of gold and putting it in that new meme stock Beyond? Analysts do think this could be just a short-term pullback, with gold consolidating over the next few weeks, especially ahead of next week's Fed's rate cut decision. Ooh, I feel like a 1/4 point is going to be dropping. So is this just profit taking or the start of a bigger correction? Make sure you save this video and we'll find out next week. And for all those gold investors that know a lot more about this than me, let me know what you think's going on in the comments below.
Africa has played a big part in lifting Dubai into the golden city that it is. Every month, tons of African gold lands in the United Arab Emirates. However, this gold doesn't land there willingly because it's smuggled. Let me give you an example. Sudan is Africa's 3rd largest gold producer, behind only Ghana and South Africa. 70% of the gold produced in Sudan is smuggled out of the country. Most of it ends up in Dubai. The same is true of Cameroon. Most of the gold that is produced in Cameroon is also smuggled out of the country, and most of it ends up in Dubai. You may say that this gold only lands in Dubai because Africans are smuggling it out in the first place. But you'd be wrong, because Africans are not the ones smuggling it out. It's a handful of corrupt leaders that are doing this. They are stealing it from the people, smuggling it out and selling it. They are only able to do so because there's a market for that smuggled gold. You can't blame that on Africans. And so we, the people of Africa, are saying to the world out there, stop buying smuggled gold from Africa. It belongs to the people of Africa, who will sell it in the right way, in a way that benefits the people of Africa.
this story actually pisses me off. Let's go to Ghana, where in just 5 months, the country has made over $5 billion US. Here's how. Ghana's new president, President Mahama, after taking office, shut down private sales by small-scale miners of gold. From now on, all of Ghana's gold has to be sold through a government-run institution, the Ghana Gold Board. As a result of this policy, Ghana recorded a historic 55.7 metric tons of gold, according to official reports. And the country has pocketed billions of US dollars from the sale of this gold. This is money that otherwise Ghana would not have seen if it had not taken ownership of its own gold and the sale of its own precious mineral. But this story isn't just about gold. It's about power. It's about a country taking ownership responsibly and honestly and transparently. And this is precisely what makes me angry, because Africa isn't poor, it's just exploited. Because take Ghana, for instance, this $5 billion US, if it wasn't about the country taking ownership and controlling the sale of its own mineral, none of this money would have stayed in Ghana. This is the same across the board on the African continent. Take my country, for instance, Zambia. Zambia is one of the most copper-rich countries in the world. According to 2022 reports, Zambia earned anywhere between 7 to 8 billion US dollars from the sale of the precious mineral, copper. And yet, Zambia doesn't mine its own copper. Zambia doesn't own the process around copper. From the ground to the market, Zambia doesn't own that process. At most, Zambia's copper is mined by foreign companies, in which the Zambian government owns a stake, a minority stake, by the way, anywhere between 8 to 40%. I did a basic simulation. If Zambia just owned 50% of that market share, that would easily add $3 billion US to Zambia's economy. Another counter argument to what I'm proposing would be, oh, but the cost of production is high, you need experts, you need machinery, you need a lot of infrastructure, which costs a lot to set up in order to extract copper, process it, and sell it. Fair enough, that is a valid argument, but my point is, we've known about copper deposits. We've known that we have this precious mineral. We've mined copper since the days of colonialism. We've had, on average, half a century, 50 years, to learn that capacity, to invest in our own capacity as countries, to be able to extract copper ourselves, to be able to process it, and to sell it. Not just copper, but every other mineral. We've known about the existence of these minerals, and we've had time, we've had decades to get our act in order, to build our own technical know-how and expertise, and to invest in the infrastructure that is needed so we can own the process. And yet we haven't done that. So again, I end with this. Africa is not poor, it's just exploited. And Ghana is putting a stop to this by making smart policy changes that foster country ownership. And we're seeing it reaping benefits. $5 billion US in just 5 months. Money that a country would not have otherwise seen.
What if I told you one African country just made 18 billion by kicking foreign countries out of their gold mines? Well, yeah, it's happening. Forgive me if I say this wrong, but since Ibrahim Toro took over in Burkina Faso, whatever it's called, that country has been taking a lot of bold steps. They nationalized their gold mines, which means their government now controls gold mines that used to be ran by foreign countries. They said in just under 2 years, they generated 18 billion in the gold mines, all from their own lands, all by their own hands. They're using a state-owned company to direct the mines and increase the profit of their country. Not the outsiders. Yeah. Now, whether you agree with the politics or not, you have to ask the question, what happens when more nations start to reclaim their natural wealth? Now, Burkina Faso, again, if I said that country name's wrong, forgive me. I mean, no disrespect. They aren't just, changing policies, though. They rewriting rules over there. I love that for them brothers.
Welcome back. Now, for generations, generation and generation, Africa exported resources and imported narrative. You get that? We exported resources, but imported narrative. We sent out gold, we sent out oil, we sent out coffee, and in return, we brought back stories that say that we have no value. Okay? Now, the truth has shifted right now. Gold no longer defines African wealth. No. We are no longer defined by gold. Okay? Africa defines the meaning of gold. Understand that? Gold does not define the wealth of Africa, but Africa defines gold. You get me? When 27% of the world golds comes from African soil, and when our nations begin to refine or begin trading and setting their own prices, the global system must adjust its scales. And that's what the headlines are calling volatility. And us, we call it what? We call it rebalancing. Okay? Now, every rise begins in the mind. Across the continent, young thinkers, young creators, and young innovators or investors are realizing something, are realizing that the greatest resource Africa owns is the brilliance of its people. Okay? From Accra to Nairobi, from Johannesburg to Kigali, the conversation has shifted from survival to strategy. And we are building fintech platforms that moves money faster than borders. We are creating art that shapes global culture. We are demanding equality in every partnership. Okay? And that mental shift, that reclaiming of agency, it is the true awakening. God has always been more than metal. You get that? It is a mirror of human belief. When fear rises, people run to it. When confidence returns, the people move away. And right now, as Africa gains confidence, the world old systems are recalibrating. Okay? Investors are taking profits, currencies are strengthening, and gold is adjusting to a new rhythm. One of that rhythm includes Africa not as pawn, but Africa as a player in this game. Economists will say that the price of gold is falling because of the strong dollar or because yields are up. Okay? And they are correct. They are correct, but incomplete information. Why? Because behind those numbers is a deeper story. The world's economic center of gravity is slowly thinking south or tilting south and east. How? Let's talk about Africa Rise. Demographic, technological, and intellectual, Africa is pulling global attention towards a new future or a new future. And this new future is when new power rises, old hedges lose balance, gold feels that tremor fast, you know? So when you hear that gold is down, don't mistake it for decline, okay? See it as a signal that the world is making room for a new frequency, Africa's frequency, okay? And this is the opening act of a long transformation, one measured not in days, but in decades, okay? And as this awakening deepens, every young African mind becomes a new reserve of value. And this is where the story truly begins. The awakening has already started. And even gold can't ignore. It can't ignore it anymore. Now, brothers and sisters, let me talk about something here. Gold is called the king of metals. Okay? And for centuries, it has ruled the world's economy. It has dictated wars. It has built empires. You know? But what they never told you is that gold that powers the world has always come from Africa. And from the ancient mines of Nubia, the ancient mines of Mali and Zimbabwe, to the gold fields of Ghana, Congo, and South Africa, Africa has always been the heartbeat of global wealth. Every empire that ever rose, from Rome to Britain, from France to America, did so on the back of African gold. Okay? But here's the truth they don't want you to see. Africa never lost her gold. Africa lost control over it. And right now, that control is returning. Okay? Now, gold is more than the shiny metal. Gold is a symbol of power. Gold, it represents who sets the rule of global trade. Okay? And for over 500 years, this power has been connected. For over 500 years, this power has been concentrated in Western hands. The world's biggest banks, the world's biggest reserves, the world's biggest currencies, all built their foundation on African extraction. Okay? When Europe colonized Africa, they didn't just take land or people, but they took the monetary backbone of the earth. They built their wealth system on African soil while convincing Africa that gold was just another commodity. But the truth is, gold was Africa's signature from God, a divine signature of abundance. And every time Africa rises, okay, every time Africa rises, gold moves. And look at the charts today. When African economies begin to awaken, when African youth challenge exploitation, gold prices start shaking. Why? Because power is shifting and gold always respond to spiritual and economic energy. You get me that? So when we see gold prices fluctuating today some will say it's about interest rate, or it's about bond yields, or investors' confidence. But we know better, okay? It is not just market logic. It is spiritual logic. As Africa begins to rise politically, mentally, and economically, the global system that once thrived on African submission starts to tremble. And gold prices go down, not because gold lost value, but because the Western control over it is awakening. Okay? So when African nations like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger expel Western military bases, something is happening. Okay? When new African alliances form to keep their resources, and when leaders like Traoré and Goita say no more exploitation, the whole system panics. They manipulate prices, they play games with the markets, they flood the media with fear. But what's really happening is that the energy of ownership is changing hands. And gold is not falling. Control is falling, not gold. Okay? So the world is witnessing something it hasn't seen in centuries. Africa no longer Africa is no longer begging for validation. Africa is setting her own prices. And that's why many global powers fear the new financial movements coming from the continent. You know, the new African gold trading system. The idea of African banks holding gold in local reserves instead of shipping it abroad. You know, the creation of African currency backed by African minerals. And that's why they don't want you to succeed, or they don't want to see succeed. Because when African gold supports African economies, the dollar trembles, the euro loses value, and the entire illusion of Western dominance starts to fade, you know? Gold prices dropping right now is not a sign of weakness, but it is the birth pain of independence. It is the sound of Africa reclaiming what is here, you know, or what is hers. The sound, or it is Africa reclaiming the identity. The spiritual side of this shift is deeper than economics, because for generations the world associated value with the West, as if blackness, Africanness, or indigenous identity has no worth. And that illusion is breaking. As more people awake to their roots, as African youths reclaim their narrative, and As the diaspora reconnects across oceans, the vibration of value is rising again, and gold moves according to human consciousness, and the global consciousness is changing. Okay? The price charts may show a dip, something going down, but the true value of gold and the true value of Africa is skyrocketing in spiritual and historical weight. The old system measure wealth by numbers, but we measure it by truth. Okay? And truth is finally being recognized. Because there is a new frontier of wealth. Africa is not rising by accident. Africa, it is the part of larger alignment, economics, ancestral and spiritual. So the fall of Western economic control isn't just a crisis. The fall of Western control, it is a transfer of energy. Africa's resources are aligning with Africa's consciousness again. And the people who were once disconnected from their old land are finding new ways to invest, are finding new ways to create, are finding new ways to protect it. So gold is no longer just metal, it is a message, a reminder that the world wealth is meaningless without the people who sustain it. And this is where Africa wins. This is where Africa wins. Because Africa doesn't have gold, but Africa is gold. Okay? Her people, the culture of Africa, the people of Africa, the land, the spirit, all radiate the same brilliance that empires once tried to steal. Okay? So, as we move into the new chapter, remember this. Every fluctuation in gold's prices is just a reflection of a deeper truth. Africa's rise is real. And no amount of market manipulation can hide that anymore. The world has always been depending on Africa. How? Because that is the truth. The entire global economy still runs on African resources. From gold to cobalt to lithium to oil, Africa supplies the materials that fuels the 21st century. Okay? Your smartphone, your electric car, and even the satellite in the space, all of them trace back to African soil. And yet for decades, Western systems build illusion, pretending that Africa was poor. But how can the richest continent on earth be poor? The only poverty Africa ever had was the theft of our value. Now the world is waking up and they are realizing that the future depends on Africa. Okay? And that's why they fear the rise of Africa. Because when Africa learns to control what she owns, the global hierarchy collapses. Now, right now, on the charts, the gold is dropping. And let me tell you, Africa mines gold. Africa is one of the biggest continents that produce gold. So when, for example, Mali, Niger, when Ibrahim Traore decided, you know what, we want to build our own reserves. We want to build our gold reserve. That means that we as Africans, the African countries that mine gold, can control the market. Just like as coffee, tea, and all these things that we are exporting. We can decide, you know what, we are holding our resources. If you need our resources, you go by our own price. And that is why you may see the price of gold going down. Because, for example, Bank of England is holding, I think it's the biggest bank gold reserve in the world. They are holding the gold that they stole from Africa. So if we decide, you know what, we are controlling the price of gold, that means their gold that is in the bank, it is valueless. So what do? Their price will go down. And let me tell you, if Africa becomes a superpower, we will be able to set our own price. Or not only a superpower, but if Africa minds how you are going, how the youths are going, how everything around Africa is going, very soon we are going to dictate the prices of our own minerals. If you want our prices, you go by our deal. We make a deal. It's not buying something on $2 and selling back to us at $200. That is pure theft. But things are changing. And at this stage that we are in today, we are living in days that it is so much powerful. Power is shifting, and Africa is on the lead of taking that power. Black people around the globe are here, and they are taking over. Okay? Tell me what you think on the comment section about this video. Until next episode, peace out.